Okay, what's going on, everyone? TJ here from Rugby Muscle. Today we're going to be talking about something that you all as rugby players should be familiar with, and that is injuries. More importantly, something that you might not be familiar with is exactly how you should be dealing with them as a rugby player. That's what we're going to be getting into. Okay, so as a rugby player, you've probably experienced some sort of injury before. In fact, if you could pop comments below whatever injuries that you've sustained before or whatever injuries you are currently dealing with, I'd love to help out because this is going to be part of a series. Today we're going to be talking about overall concepts and how to just deal with them in general. And in future videos, we're going to be getting into some specifics on what you can do. So I'd love to hear you guys comment whatever injuries that you've had. Likewise, if you're already down there, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new. Those two things are huge. The thumbs up really does help the video do well and grows the YouTube channel. Of course, if you're interested in working with me directly or doing anything involved with Rugby Muscle, these videos are sort of helping you understand how you should be training and you want to step it up a little bit more. Use the links in the description below and we can really sort something out for you. Now, today in this video, we're going to be talking about the overall mindset that you need to take with injuries. That's not just, in terms of what to do when they happen, but how to prevent them. The overall mindset that you should need to make sure that you make progress and how to deal with things such as preventable injuries, preparable injuries. Preparable is kind of a word that I made up, but you'll see as I get into it what that really means and how you should be approaching your injuries that you might sustain throughout your career. And once again, towards the end, we'll also talk about different specific injuries, and I'd love to hear your feedback. So first and foremost, you have to understand this as a general, complete, absolute truth, right? Injuries are going to be a part of rugby. That's just unfortunately what is always going to happen. When you've got a sport such as rugby where collisions are always happening, you've got big people and bigger people smashing into each other, high speeds, high forces. You've also got chaos as people are coming from different directions. It's just going to be a sport that will see a fair amount of injuries, particularly in seasons, with 20 plus games throughout the year. You will be very lucky if you don't get injured. With that being said, when you do get injured, it should not surprise you. It shouldn't be something that takes you off and you're like, oh my God, how did I get injured? I'm only playing rugby. No, it's a brutal sport. It should never surprise you. Likewise, that should mean that you should never just stop because you've been injured. Oh, I guess I've hurt my elbow. I guess I can't do anything, right? Or I've twisted my ankle. I guess I can't do anything. That cannot be the mindset that you treat with injuries with, because the less time you spend training, the less time you spend getting better. So we've really got to make sure that we deal with that. And that's something that you really must understand. The less time you spend training, the less time you are spent making progress. So we really want to make sure that we are making progress. And so first and foremost, with injuries, you want to make sure that you get injured as little as possible, because that's going to give you the best chance to make progress. If in an ideal world, you're never going to get injured and you're going to keep getting better and better and better and better until age eventually catches you up. But in your late 30s or 40s, that is absolutely a possibility if you get injured as little as possible. There's nothing to say that you will begin a massive physical decline in your 30s unless injuries have taken their fair toll on you. So really, you want to get injured as little as possible, right? And you want to be making progress for as long as possible. So the first thing with that, in this sort of three-pronged approach we've got here, is preventable injuries. So what are those? We'll get into that in a second. But if you're in the gym, your first task should not be getting injured in the gym. If things like lifting constantly to failure, constantly heavy, really pushing yourself and snapping your chest or snapping off your pec in the gym, that's a preventable injury. You shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be getting injured in the gym. You should also not really be getting injured outside of collisions. The collisions are the inevitable thing. Those are the things that I'd say they're your other injuries. They're your preparable injuries. You prepare for injuries by doing things like getting bigger, getting stronger, getting technically better, doing all the things that are going to give you the most chance of not being injured each time you make contact. The bigger you are, if you're having a collision with a smaller opponent, you're more likely to be okay with that. Whereas if someone's giant and they're smashing into you, that's going to give you a greater chance of being injured. So it still requires some luck, right? Because you can still be big and just catch a collision awkwardly, and you still might get injured, and do everything that you can in your power to, prepare yourself perfectly, but you still might, have someone fall on your ankle awkwardly and get injured. And that's going to be inevitable. But the better prepared you are, the better shape you're in, the more likely you are to not get injured by those things. And the third part in this sort of making progress sort of mindset is that if you are injured, you should still be training. You shouldn't just stop everything because of an injury. Now, that depends on what the injury is, of course, but you're going to try your best to still keep training, keep progressing. So if you're injured, still train. Depending on what the injury is, you might have to train around the injury. So, for example, if you've broken your leg, you can't really, make that injury better. You just have to train around it. You might just have to train your upper body. You might just have to train the other leg. You train around that injury. Sometimes you might have to train through the injury. So if you've got some sort of back issue or shoulder issue, you still might sort of be able to do some light work and get through it, or you can still do pulling motions but not pushing motions. You can still train through that injury, or find a movement, maybe if it's your elbow, that allows you to still work all the muscles and work your strength, but just without putting that elbow in a bad position where it hurts. The other thing that you might have to do is to train to actually heal that injury. So if you've got bad, dodgy knees, the solution might not be just to not squat forever and only use the leg press or whatever. It might be to fix your squat, to sit better, and to actually heal that knee and make your motor pattern much better so that you don't experience knee pain in the long term. All three absolutely viable options, but all involve you still absolutely training even though you are injured, and that's something that you have to make sure that you do. Now, when we're talking about training through injuries and training in spite of injuries, I have less of a time like being sympathetic to people that get injured with preventable injuries, and it happens. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. I'll hold my hand up and say that a couple of months ago I actually strained my hamstring. That absolutely is a preventable injury because I'll get into that in a second. First, really important injuries that you must avoid are injuries in the gym. You avoid them by just not being an idiot, right? You move well. You don't deadlift like this clown on the left. You also don't do what this guy did in a video that we've reviewed recently. The guy that trained like a rugby player for, I think it was a month, who, you don't just massively escalate your volume and then expect nothing to happen. No, you have to, if you're going to increase your volume, if you're going to make drastic changes, you should do them over a long period of time. You need to build up and prepare the body for things to come. You cannot just go straight from doing nothing to doing 9 sessions a week of heavy work, of explosive work, and expect nothing to happen. You always have to manage your volume. You have to do slow changes, slow increases in volume, slow increases in intensity to allow your body to accommodate that load and eventually build the resistance enough up so that it will be able to withstand that stuff. You can't just throw the kitchen sink and expect to be okay. No, you're probably going to get injured. That's an absolute, if anything, if you get injured in the gym, like, that's on you. That's a mistake. You shouldn't be pushing yourself. Sometimes, very rarely, it can be bad luck, but more often than not, if you warm up, if you manage your training volume, and if you move really well, you don't excuse any poor technique, you're going to be fine in the gym. You shouldn't be getting injured in the gym. You should be using the gym to avoid getting injured elsewhere. Avoid things like non-contact injuries. So knee injuries, for the most part, like ACLs, when you see them go out, they can happen, but more often than not, if you're prepared well enough, you're not going to sustain ACL injuries. You're also not going to be able to you're going to prepare yourself to be less likely to get hamstring injuries as well, muscle strains, things like that, where there's no one around you. You shouldn't be getting injured. You should train yourself to move well. You should be absolutely warming up to your best ability, either before matches or before training. It should also be, again, managing volume. You shouldn't be going from doing nothing to 5 days of sprinting a week. You shouldn't be even doing from nothing to absolute balls out sprints. You should build up your intensity, particularly with sprinting. Sprinting is brutal on the hamstrings. You should prepare your hamstrings to accommodate for those sprinting. And again, just don't be an idiot. Just be sensible with this stuff, and you're going to be able to prevent these injuries. Once again, I'd like to hear your comments if you've had any of these injuries that you think might be preventable, and we'll prepare some solutions for them in the future videos. Preparable injuries. These are a little bit more of a grey area because, rugby's a big collision contact sport. But once again, if you move well and if you train your body to move well, you're going to train your body to be more resistant to injury. Likewise, if you're big and strong, you're also going to be better in contact. You're going to be more resistant, for the most part, to injuries. There are examples of people that get so big and so strong that they put the joints, so much sheer force through their joints that they might put themselves more at risk of injuries. I don't think that those people are watching this video, but if you are, again, I'd like to hear from you in the comments below. Maybe you are. I doubt it, but we'll see. And the other thing is being fit, right? Because if you're really gassing out in a game or in training, your movement drops down. You move poorly. You're more likely to make coordination errors and step in the wrong direction, or use a lazy arm instead of an actual proper tackle. And again, that's more opportunity for you to get injured. So whilst they still might happen, I think you're more prepared to, or you're more in a better state to avoid those injuries if you're prepared as best you can. And then we're looking at aging niggles. These are the things that sort of just keep coming up week on week and then year after year, and they build up to be injuries that sometimes over the years end up causing you to have to sit out games or sit out movements. And I think for more often than not, it's just consistent impact stuff that leads to this stuff. But again, if you manage it well and if you can train to heal those things, it's kind of what I said about knee injuries before, right? You might say to yourself that you've constantly got dodgy knees or a dodgy back or a dodgy shoulder, but if you manage your training, and this one might be one where you train to heal and make those injuries better, you're more likely to, again, not be subject to those injuries. I see people that claim that they've got really dodgy elbows, and then I see them trying to curl 80 kilos with elbow pads on. You wouldn't need that elbow pad and you wouldn't have elbow issues if you weren't trying to curl 80 kilos when you clearly can't really well curl 40 kilos. It doesn't make sense to me. So again, don't be an idiot with this stuff. And for the most part, I'm not being horrible, but you can tell yourself if you're being a bit of an idiot, right? If you're being a bit of a meathead that's pushing stuff too much. So overall, what are the big takeaways that I want you to get out from this video? First and foremost, most importantly, don't get injured in the gym. Like I said, an injury is somewhat of an inevitability with a big contact sport like rugby, where you're playing 20 plus matches in a year. Save the injury risk for the games. Don't use poor form and then hurt yourself. Don't let yourself get in such bad shape that you're so gassed that you move poorly in the gym. Move as best you can. Build yourself up to be big and strong so that you can withstand injuries. Do your prehab work. Do your extras work. Do your accessories work. Don't ignore body parts. Be smart, and then overall be in good shape. The healthier you are, the better shape that you're in, the less likely you are to get injured in the gym, and the better you're going to be as a rugby player because you've got more time to make progress. But if injuries do happen, do not just stop. Understand that managing injuries and training around injuries, training through injuries, whatever you need to do, is a big part of training to be a better rugby player, because there are just so many chances that you could get injured that you want to learn how to still make progress in those times. If you just stopped and started every time you got injured, not only do you miss out on a lot of time that you could be spent getting better, but you also have to reintroduce training, and then you've got to slowly build that volume back up to be able to tolerate getting better and to give yourself enough training volume that you can actually get better. And then you stop and then you restart again, and you have to get into that process. Don't let that one injury stop you from, and then we've all seen that one person that has got one knee injury or one back injury, and then they've stopped going to the gym, and then they've got in terrible shape, and they say, I used to be in shape, but then this one injury happened. Don't be that person, right? Do not just stop if you get injured. Do whatever you can to get yourself in the gym, keep going, keep that habit happening, keep getting better. Acknowledge that those injuries are there, but figure out what you can do to train around them, train through them, train them to get better if you can. But acknowledge that they're there, and acknowledge that that's just a part of training to be a better rugby player, is training around or through and managing those injuries. So once again, let me know in the comments below if you have any injuries that you are trying to deal with. I'm going to create another video where we actually go through some injuries and common occurrences and things like that, where we can actually figure out movements and tactics to deal with these injuries. Well, that was awkward. The Mac just ran out of battery. But like I said, let me know any injuries that you've had in the comments below, or any injuries that you're currently dealing with, and we will address them and tactics around how to get those better in a future video. If you made it all the way to the end, please give it a thumbs up. Really does help out the channel. Subscribe if you're new. Check out all Rugby Muscle stuff in the links below. And I'll see you in the next one where my Mac won't run out of battery. Cheers.